Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a number of articles I've seen around now in the media about how sexually transmitted diseases, gonorrhea, the clap, syphilis, or whatever, have made a significant comeback. They were supposed to have been close to eradicated, certainly in the West, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, but they've made a comeback. This comeback seems to have coincided with the increasing globalist stranglehold on our lives and, of course, mass migration. Maybe that's coincidence, I don't know. But let's sort of have a look at these articles because there's not a contradictions in them. Now, we can assume that they're going through the typical propaganda filter. For example, if most of these sexually transmitted diseases were occurring, say, for example, I don't know if they are or they're not, but if they're occurring in the Black community, then that would be filtered out of the reporting, and it would be reported, as it is, by the way, reported that it's universal across all races and across all age groups, which is patent nonsense, of course. That isn't the case, but that's how they're doing it to try and get or tiptoe around the race and gender issues and the politically correct issues of our time. So they're willfully misreporting it in order to again produce the politically correct globalist approved narrative on this. Is the core issue of an increase in sexually transmitted diseases occurring? Well, I don't doubt that. It would seem to be. Where it's occurring in what communities and what sections, at what across what age groups, then that's a different matter. Now, out of all the people I know, who are sort of, 45 years old plus, say, in that type of age group, some of them in quite good condition, so they'd be still capable, at least, of being sexually active. There's a friend of ours. She's in her 40s and got divorced, and she finds it actually pretty hard to get laid, and she's got to sort of really lower her standards if she's going to get laid. She has to sort of close her eyes and think of the bigger picture if she wants to get laid. But most of the women I know can't get laid. The older women, I mean, can't get laid, and they struggle to even get a date, let alone get laid. And some of them, even if they manage to get a date, find that the guy doesn't want to jump them anyway, and so he drops them off and very politely thanks them for a nice night, or coming out with him for dinner or something. Or the movies, whatever. So most of the women can't get laid, and there are there's a few women I know who are nurses, for example, who even in their 30s, late 30s, say, a couple I'm thinking of, they're reduced to hitting on rando patients that come into the medical practice or whatever to try and get laid. So now some of them you say, well, they're not exactly hot looking and so on, but nor is every man in the world hot looking. So it's surprising. So I don't think there's that much sex going. There are that many people who are copulating around that would create this crescendo of this supposed marked uptick in sexually transmitted diseases. So I don't think it's happening in the older. I mean, I'm sure there are some, but I just don't think it's happening there. And older people would tend to be more, I would suggest at least, more conscious of the ramifications. When you're younger, you can kind of recover from things, but as you get older, it takes a little bit longer to recover from things. So you think precautions such as condoms, or if there's a problem, you quickly go and see the doctor and get antibiotics. You think that would be so? What we're looking at here is an issue of low levels of precaution, and then these people aren't going to see doctors to get antibiotics, which are quite effective in clearing these things up. So there are two issues here. Now, this would suggest very impromptu type hookups, suggesting younger people people of lower education, and people who come from cultures where rando, arbitrary copulation is kind of an accepted way of doing things. So I'd say among the white population, this would be fairly low, not non-existent. I'm sure it happens, but fairly low. So I'm thinking it's coming from people from other cultures where access to advanced medicine and drugs and concepts of hygiene aren't quite the same. Now, if you look in places, say, outside of the West, where sexually transmitted diseases are at crescendo pitch, fever pitch, then they come from certain parts of the world. And in those parts of the world also happen to have, over the last 25 years, have a large cohort of immigrants into the West. And at that same time as they're arriving in the West, the sexually transmitted diseases issues picked up to be a bigger issue as it was from what it was. 25 years ago, the problem didn't exist in the West. It was such a minor thing. And some of you older may remember the scare about things like herpes and all that sort of stuff. I remember in the inner city sort of lifestyle I think I had when that all came up. That was that was what that's all anybody talked about. The only thing that AIDS did when it came along was stop the media talking about herpes. That seemed to be its primary achievement there. But like even in the case of AIDS, there's been a lot of development in drugs and medications in that area that would, certainly lower the death rate, which was reasonably high for people who got it back at the time. Now let's look at younger people in the supposed hookup culture. Now I still know a lot of people. When I say a lot, I still know people where they, for example, there's a young woman. She's not much to look at. Now she could be if she made an effort, but she was. She lives just like a few doors sort of down. I don't know. She'd be early 20s and like a college kid, and she has her girlfriends come over. She's not a lesbian or anything, but she finds it very difficult to get laid, and her friends, like, they've got no boyfriends. Now it doesn't mean that they may not go into a drunken party somewhere on college and get rando laid or something. I mean, that's always a possibility, but and I wouldn't put it past sort of them, but nonetheless, this idea of having some sort of regular boyfriend, it doesn't seem easy for them. They don't seem to be able to do it. And I think part of that's the emasculation of men. The other part is this constant carrying on about the evil patriarchy, and we're surrounded by Nazis and da-da-da. But also the basis of younger people getting together. There's a tiny proportion, minuscule proportion of jobs for young people where the man has a job, or the male has a job that has sufficient purchasing power to even contemplate remotely of having a family. So this idea that you marry a man who's got a good job or whatever, and then start building a future in terms of family and buying a house, and procreating and so on, that's gone. It just doesn't exist anymore for young people outside of inheritance or I don't know, winning the lottery, that sort of thing. So rando hookups, because people can't make a life together and they don't have a prospect of, or there's no real value or mileage in a longer term steady relationship outside of some sort of a commitment to one another and a level of fidelity or something like that. But beyond that, there's no life for these people. So rando hookups would be, well, I can't get married, I can't afford that, I can't afford to buy a house. There's no point in having long-term relationships, so I might as well just get laid when I get horny or something like that. That could be a sort of a thing out there. But again, I don't think it's happening amongst white people. Certainly from the time that, I think this was, they did a sex ed thing in high school where they had these lurid pictures of people who had the 1 in a million case of super advanced syphilis that was never treated, and we all looked at that and with great horror try and scare the crap out of you. But the reality is that hardly anybody would ever get that. But that was the sort of the ultimate graphic that they wanted to show to get across the point. But the idea of antibiotics and precautions. It's certainly been around from almost as far as back as I can remember. There was that summer of love, free love type thing, say 1965 to 1975 type decade. That created, I think, there was a real spike in sexually transmitted diseases during that time for obvious reasons, but things calmed down quite a lot after that. And when I was sort of becoming in my later teens, 17 onwards type thing, that summer of love, free love type thing had already passed, had already gone. So I've always sort of existed in this idea of, take precautions and so on. Again, go to the doctor if something's not right. I came from that type of generation. So that generation, and again, I'm not a million years old. I'll be the 70 very soon. So that's something that. So I think this uptick in sexually transmitted disease is confined to certain groups within the population. I don't think it's widespread. I don't think it's older people. But the media, because of the globalist narrative and tap dancing around race and all that sort of stuff, and I think they're not talking about the issue honestly, and so we're hearing about it as if it's a universal thing everywhere, equally spread across all age groups and races. That's nonsense. It's crap. I think the relationship between the mass migration from parts of the world that have huge problems in this area, I think that's not coincidence. I think that's the root cause of it all. Being Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.